She doesn't belong here." These words, whispered just loud enough to be heard, sliced through the gilded air of the Grand Meridian Hotel's ballroom entrance. The elderly woman in her modest blue dress, clutching a small envelope, froze mid-step. Around her, silk gowns rustled and designer watches gleamed under crystal chandeliers as the city's elite streamed past for the Children's Future Charity Gala. Security guards exchanged glances. The manager, in his immaculate black suit, stepped forward with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Nobody noticed the tall figure in the corner, observing everything. Eleanor Wright had taught elementary school for 43 years. Her weathered hands had guided thousands of children through their first letters, their first books, their first dreams. Tonight, she'd brought her life savings, $820 in an envelope with a handwritten note. Not much compared to the minimum $10,000 plates inside, but everything to her. She'd read that tonight's gala would fund educational programs for underprivileged children, the same children she'd been quietly helping her entire life, spending her meager salary on school supplies, winter coats, and college application fees. "I'm sorry, madam, but this is an invitation-only event." The manager's voice was polite but firm, his hand already gesturing toward the exit. Whispers rippled through the arriving guests. Some smirked, others looked away uncomfortably. Eleanor's cheeks flushed with humiliation as she tried to explain, her voice trembling. "I've come to donate." The manager cut her off with a raised hand. He hadn't noticed how the tall man in the corner had straightened, how his eyes had narrowed, or that this man was Elon Musk. Eleanor clutched her envelope tighter, her knuckles whitening. 43 years of teaching had given her dignity, the kind that doesn't crumble at the first sign of rejection. "Young man," she said, her voice steadier now, "I understand this is exclusive, but surely the purpose is to help children. That's all I want to do." The manager's smile tightened. Behind him, champagne flutes clinked and laughter floated through the marble foyer. A photographer's flash captured a celebrity couple's arrival, momentarily illuminating Eleanor's weathered face in harsh light. The contrast was striking. Her sensible shoes against Italian leather, her carefully preserved dress amid couture gowns, her lifetime of service against a single night of performative charity. The manager glanced nervously at the growing line of impatient VIPs. "Ma'am, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this event has been planned for months. Each guest has been carefully vetted. Perhaps you could donate through our website instead." His tone made it clear. This was not a suggestion, but a dismissal. Eleanor's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly. She'd taken 3 buses to get here, had her hair done for the first time in years. The envelope contained not just money but a letter from her students about what education had meant to them. The crowd around them had grown, a wall of designer suits and sequined gowns forming a semicircle of spectators. Some guests were openly staring, others pretending not to notice while stealing glances. A woman in diamonds whispered to her companion, "Who let her in?" loud enough for Eleanor to hear. Someone snickered. The security guard took a step closer, his hand resting casually on his radio. "I just thought," Eleanor began, her voice fading as she realized how naive she must seem. This world operated by different rules than the one she knew. Her classroom where every child's penny in the donation jar was celebrated, where the richest gift was effort, not dollars. Here, her life savings wasn't even enough for a seat at the table. The manager checked his watch impatiently. "Security will escort you out." He nodded to the guard, already turning away. Conversation dismissed. A camera flash went off again. Someone documenting this minor drama for social media. Eleanor's humiliation would become content, scrolled past between celebrity gossip and vacation photos. In the corner, Elon Musk had been watching everything. Unlike the other billionaires who'd arrived with entourages and announcements, he'd slipped in quietly, observing. His mind, the same one that reimagined space travel and electric vehicles, was calculating something entirely different now. Eleanor took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. The security guard reached for her elbow, but she gently stepped away. "I'll see myself out," she said with quiet dignity. She'd faced tougher crowds, 34th graders during a power outage, parent-teacher conferences with combative parents, school board meetings where arts funding was always first on the chopping block. This was just another moment to model grace under pressure, though there were no children watching to learn from her example. What she didn't know was that someone else was learning. Musk had built his career on recognizing patterns others missed, on seeing value where others saw only problems to discard. As Eleanor turned to leave, he noticed something no one else had: the careful way she handled that envelope, how her eyes had sought out the charity's mission statement framed on the wall, the small pin on her lapel from the National Education Association's 40-year service award. The manager was already welcoming the next guest, a hedge fund manager whose donation would be precisely calculated for maximum tax advantage. The security guard was already turning away. The wealthy guests were already forgetting the awkward interruption to their evening of self-congratulation. That's when Elon Musk stepped forward. "Wait," he said. Just one word, but in his voice it carried the weight of billions. The single word rippled through the crowd. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Champagne flutes paused halfway to lips. Heads turned, first toward Musk, then following his gaze to Eleanor, standing small but straight-backed near the exit. The manager froze, recognition dawning on his face. That deliberate walk, that distinctive profile now turned toward him with calm intensity. The second richest man in the world had just entered the conversation. "Mr. Musk," the manager stammered, composure fracturing. "What a pleasure to—" "I know this woman," Musk interrupted, his South African accent more pronounced as he stepped closer to Eleanor. This wasn't entirely true. They'd never met, but he recognized her type. His mother had been a working model who later became a nutritionist. His grandmother a chiropractor in an era when women rarely had professional careers. He'd been raised to respect women who carved their own paths. Eleanor looked up at him, confusion evident in her eyes. "Sir, I don't believe we've met." "Not directly," Musk agreed, standing beside her now, creating a visual alliance that sent ripples of discomfort through the watching crowd. "But I know dedicated teachers. My mother was one. They shaped me as much as any parent." The manager's smile had become a rictus of uncertainty. The event's carefully crafted exclusivity, its very selling point, was suddenly a liability. Every eye watched Musk, whose unpredictability was legendary. Would this become a PR nightmare or opportunity? "She wants to donate," Musk continued, his voice level but carrying effortlessly through the now silent foyer. "And you're turning her away from a charity event." He let that sentence hang in the air, its irony evident to everyone. The wealthy audience shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the contradiction. "Mr. Musk, I assure you," the manager began, "we have protocols." "I'm interested in these protocols," Musk cut in. "Please explain them. To both of us." The manager's composure crumbled further under Musk's unwavering gaze. He tugged at his collar, suddenly too tight. "Sir, this is a premium fundraising event. The minimum donation is $10,000 per plate. We have limited seating, careful security considerations." "I see," Musk nodded thoughtfully. "So it's about money." The simplicity of his statement cut through the manager's elaborate justifications. Phones had emerged throughout the crowd, recording discreetly. Tomorrow's headlines were being written in real time. Eleanor, who had remained dignified throughout, now spoke. "I don't need a seat or dinner. I just wanted to contribute." She held up her envelope. "It's not much, but it's what I can give." Musk took the envelope gently, looking at Eleanor with genuine curiosity. "May I?" When she nodded, he opened it carefully. Inside was a check for $820, paper-clipped to a stack of handwritten letters. He read the top one silently, his expression changing almost imperceptibly. "This is from her students," he said loud enough for those nearby to hear. Children thanking her for buying them books, for paying for field trips when their parents couldn't afford it, for staying after school to help them understand math. He looked up, scanning the crowd of wealthy donors. "She's been running her own private charity her entire career, on a teacher's salary." The crowd stirred uncomfortably. A woman in jewels worth millions touched her pearl necklace self-consciously. A tech CEO who'd arrived in a Lamborghini studied his shoes. The comparison was unavoidable, their carefully calculated tax-deductible donations against this teacher's quiet lifetime of giving. "What's your name?" Musk asked the teacher. "Eleanor Wright," she replied, her voice steady despite the unexpected attention. Musk nodded, then turned back to the manager. "Miss Wright will be my guest tonight." It wasn't a request. The manager's professional smile reassembled itself. "Of course, Mr. Musk. We'd be delighted to accommodate Miss Wright." He gestured toward the ballroom, suddenly solicitous. "Please, right this way." But Musk remained motionless, studying the manager with the same analytical focus he applied to engineering problems. "I'm curious," he said, his tone casual but penetrating. "How many other Eleanor Wrights have you turned away tonight? People whose contributions might seem small by your standards, but represent everything to them." The question hung in the air. No one spoke. A photographer's camera clicked rapidly, capturing the tableau. The elderly teacher, the billionaire, the flustered manager, the watching crowd of the wealthy elite suddenly forced to confront the true meaning of charity. "None," the manager finally answered, his voice strained. "I mean, no one else has tried to—" "Because your barriers are too high," Musk finished for him. He turned to Eleanor, his demeanor softening. "Miss Wright, would you walk in with me? I think there are people here who need to hear about your work." Eleanor hesitated, clutching her purse. This wasn't what she had expected. She'd come to give, not to be the center of attention. "Mr. Musk, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not looking for recognition." "That's precisely why you deserve it," he replied. Then, more quietly, so only she could hear, "The children you help, wouldn't you speak up for them? This room decides funding that affects thousands of students. They should hear from someone who actually knows what those children need." Eleanor considered this, then nodded slowly. The calculus had changed. This wasn't about her pride now, but about advocacy. Around them, the crowd had begun to murmur, social media already humming with partial accounts of what was unfolding. Musk offered his arm to Eleanor, a deliberate gesture of respect. Together, they walked past the manager, whose face cycled through a complex series of emotions. Embarrassment, calculation, forced accommodation. Photographers' flashes exploded around them. The unlikely pair crossed the threshold into the ballroom, where the elite of society waited, unaware that their carefully choreographed evening was about to change. The ballroom fell into a hush as they entered. 500 of the nation's wealthiest individuals, gathered at tables adorned with arrangements of orchids worth more than a teacher's monthly salary, turned to stare. The live orchestra faltered momentarily before resuming its practiced background melody. Elon Musk, with Eleanor Wright on his arm, walked deliberately toward the center of the room. The event organizer, a polished woman in a red gown, recovered first. She approached with a practiced smile. "Mr. Musk, we've reserved your table near the stage. May I show you—" "There's been a change of plans," Musk interrupted, his voice carrying effortlessly. "Ms. Wright will be joining the panel discussion tonight." The organizer blinked rapidly. "The panel? But sir, we've carefully selected experts to discuss educational funding initiatives. The program has been finalized for weeks." "Then you'll need to revise it," Musk replied. "Unless there's already a working educator on your panel of experts." He knew the answer. These discussions typically featured politicians, CEOs of educational technology companies, and foundation heads, rarely those who worked directly with students. The organizer's silence confirmed his suspicion. Around them, guests were abandoning all pretense of not listening, cocktail conversations forgotten as they watched the drama unfold. At a nearby table, a famous tech billionaire leaned forward with undisguised interest, while his wife whispered urgently to a companion. Eleanor stood quietly beside Musk, her years of classroom management evident in her composed demeanor despite the extraordinary circumstances. She hadn't sought this spotlight, but now that she was in it, she wouldn't waste the opportunity. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," the organizer suggested, gesturing toward a side door. "I don't think so," Musk replied. "Educational charity should be transparent, don't you agree? Ms. Wright has spent her life in classrooms. She has something valuable to contribute to tonight's discussion about helping children." He turned to Eleanor. "Wouldn't you say so?" Eleanor took a deep breath. 43 years of speaking up for children who couldn't speak for themselves had prepared her for this moment. "I've taught in the same school district for over 4 decades, Eleanor began, her voice quiet but clear. "I've watched funding come and go. I've seen programs start with fanfare and disappear when attention shifts. What children need isn't flashy technology or one-time donations." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of people whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations. They need consistency. They need adults who show up every day. They need to know someone cares if they succeed. A silence had fallen across the ballroom. Waiters paused in their service. The event photographer captured frame after frame of the unexpected confrontation. Eleanor, emboldened by the attention, continued. "Last winter, one of my students came to school in the same thin jacket every day, even when temperatures dropped below freezing. His parents both worked 2 jobs, but they still couldn't afford a proper winter coat. So I bought him one. I didn't create a foundation or issue a press release. I just did what was needed." Musk watched her with evident approval. The organizer stood frozen, unsure how to regain control of her carefully planned event. At nearby tables, guests shifted uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact, others watching with growing interest. "That's what real charity looks like," Eleanor continued. "It's not about galas or recognition. It's about seeing a need and filling it, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching." A woman at a front table, the CEO of a major banking corporation, set down her champagne flute. "How many coats have you bought over the years, Ms. Wright?" she asked, her tone unreadable. Eleanor shrugged slightly. "I've never counted. Coats, shoes, backpacks, glasses, dental visits, field trip fees. You stop keeping track after a while." The CEO nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. "And all on a teacher's salary." "It's not about how much you have," Eleanor replied. "It's about how much you're willing to give." Musk stepped forward. "That's why Ms. Wright deserves to be heard tonight. She's not giving from excess. She's giving from necessity. Her donation represents months of careful saving. What does yours represent? Minutes of your income? Seconds?" His words landed like stones in still water, ripples of discomfort spreading through the crowd. The tech billionaire at the nearby table set down his drink with deliberate care. "That's rather reductive, Elon. Many of us have significant philanthropic initiatives." "With your names on the buildings," Musk countered, "with press releases and tax benefits." He wasn't excluding himself from this criticism. His own giving had often come with public recognition. When's the last time any of us made a personal sacrifice for our giving? When did it actually cost us something we needed? The room had become uncomfortably warm. A famous actress studied her diamond bracelet as though seeing it for the first time. A hedge fund manager loosened his bow tie slightly. Eleanor's voice cut through the tension. "I didn't come here to shame anyone," she said firmly. "You all have resources I can only dream of. That's a blessing. You can do so much good." She opened her purse and pulled out several folded papers, slightly creased from being carried. "These are letters from my students, describing what they want to be when they grow up. Engineers, doctors, business owners, artists. They have the potential. What they don't have are the opportunities." She unfolded one letter, the childish handwriting visible to those nearby. "This is from Miguel. He's 10. He wants to build robots someday. He's brilliant with mechanical things. He fixed our classroom clock when it broke. But his school has no robotics program, no advanced science curriculum." Musk took the letter, reading it silently. Something in his expression changed, a softening, a recognition. He looked around the room, at the collected power and wealth assembled for a night of self-congratulation. "Here's my proposal," he said finally. "Everyone in this room has come prepared to write a check tonight. What if, instead of the usual donation, you each commit to adopting one classroom in an underserved school? Not just money, though that's needed, but your time, your networks, your expertise. What if each of you became a mem's-right to a group of children who need you?" The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was thoughtful, considering. The event organizer, sensing the shift in the room, stepped forward cautiously. The event organizer cleared her throat. "Perhaps we could restructure tonight's panel discussion. Ms. Wright, would you be willing to share more specific insights about what resources these classrooms truly need?" The question was genuine, the professional veneer giving way to authentic interest. Eleanor nodded, her expression softening. "I'd be honored." At a table near the front, the bank CEO stood up. "I'll commit to 5 classrooms, not just one, and I'll ensure our bank creates a streamlined program for teachers to access microgrants without bureaucratic hurdles." She looked directly at Eleanor. No teacher should have to use their own salary to buy basic supplies. Another guest stood, a Silicon Valley pioneer. "My company will provide coding education and equipment to 50 schools this year. Real equipment, not outdated donations. And we'll create mentorship programs with our engineers." More guests began rising, making commitments both financial and personal. The event was transforming before their eyes, turning from a self-congratulatory gala into something with substance and direction. The manager, who had tried to turn Eleanor away, stood by the door, watching with a complex mixture of emotions as the evening he'd planned disintegrated and reformed into something entirely different. Musk guided Eleanor to the seat originally reserved for him at the front table. The event staff scrambled to create a place for her on the panel, bringing in an additional microphone, printing a new name card. Social media was already erupting with snippets of what had transpired, #EleanorWright, trending alongside videos of the confrontation and subsequent discussion. As the panel began, Eleanor spoke with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades in the trenches of education. She didn't offer vague platitudes or theoretical frameworks. She talked about specific children, real challenges, practical solutions. The audience, accustomed to polite applause and distracted scrolling during such presentations, listened with rapt attention. Halfway through, Musk took the microphone. "I'll match every commitment made tonight," he announced. "And I'm establishing a new fund specifically for veteran teachers like Miss Wright to direct resources where they're actually needed, not where administrators think they should go." Phones appeared throughout the audience, not to check emails or social feeds, but to make notes, send directives to staff, capture ideas. The evening's focus had shifted from who was giving to what was actually needed. The celebrities present found themselves for once not the center of attention, as real-world expertise took precedence over fame and wealth. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Eleanor found herself surrounded by business cards and contact information from people whose net worth exceeded billions. Her original donation envelope, that carefully saved $820, had been returned to her with a note from Musk. "Keep this. Your students need it more than this foundation does." The manager approached her, his earlier disdain replaced with careful deference. "Ms. Wright, your car is waiting whenever you're ready to leave." She smiled gently. "I'll be taking the bus, just as I came." "Absolutely not," Musk interjected, overhearing. "My driver will take you home. And tomorrow, we're visiting your school." As Eleanor gathered her things, a tech mogul's wife pressed a card into her hand. "Call me directly," she insisted. "My foundation has been funding the wrong initiatives. We need your guidance." Walking out, Eleanor passed the expensive floral arrangements being dismantled. The event might end tonight, but its impact wouldn't. Real change had begun, not because of the wealthy donors who had always been there, but because one teacher had refused to accept that her contribution was too small to matter. Outside, as Musk escorted her to his waiting car, Eleanor looked up at the stars, thinking of Miguel and his dreams of building robots, and all the children like him who might now have their chance. Sometimes the true heroes weren't the ones who gave millions, but those who gave everything they had.